Running commentary. We are exploring listening to albums. It is a lost art form. We took an hour out of our day. We switched off the phones. We switched off the computers. We did not answer the door. We sat down and we listened to the artist's vision and concept. Simply Red, Picture Book. First track on the album is Come to My Aid. It's the second single. We'll get back into talking about the songs. Saddled Red opens with the upright bass. It's a mood piece. 3, Look at You Now. I bought this track immediately afterwards. That's always a good sign. Energetic and vibrant. I love it. It's da-da-da-da-da-da. I love it. Love the brass on this. Was not expecting to... I'm never actually expecting to be buying anything from these albums, by the way. But Look at You Now really is a great song. I think it might be my favorite, actually. I really, really like it. It just fits into that time so beautifully. I love the idea of hearing this live. I feel like it's a really great song. I really enjoyed it. Heaven is a taster of the band's musical taste. It is immediately reminiscent of the group's cover of Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes' If You Don't Know Me By Now. The track was written by David Byrne and Jerry Harrison of Talking Heads, so it's actually a Talking Heads cover. This bar is called Heaven, or the bar is called Heaven, and heaven is a place where nothing ever happens. This is true. Perfection is death. It's Heaven is indeed, upon research, a track on Talking Heads' Fear of Music album. So 6 years later, Simply Red's cover is an inspired and interesting choice. I don't think of Simply Red as being the kind of people that would have liked Talking Heads, but then they did originally start out as being a sort of punk-style band. We'll get into more of that later. Jericho is the third single. You won't go to the ball. You won't go. You won't go. You won't go to the ball. This is the theme of this song, and there is a social commentary here which cannot be ignored. You won't go to the ball. England, right? Class system. You won't go to the ball. You know, you didn't come out of the right vagina. You won't go to the ball. This is how it works. This is the class system. And it doesn't matter what anyone thinks about this song, that you won't go to the ball thing is really powerful because it talks about actually what England's all about. You won't go to the ball. You won't go to the ball. Here in America as well, a little more subtle, but same kind of thing. It's this whole thing about social kind of status. Like, oh, what do you do? Great question. Why do you want to know? You want to know because you want to know how much money I've got. Because then you want to see how valuable I am as a person to see if you can go out with me. This is what Jericho's about. It's the third single. And if you ain't rich, yeah, you won't go to the ball. Mick Hucknall is the writer on this track. The subject of money is clearly referenced. And this theme will continue on track 6. What I like about Jericho is that it has a message and manages to deliver a social comment in a nice jazz club kind of feel. So it's kind of, there's a subtlety here which has to be respected. Picture Book was the debut album by Simply Red. It was released in October of 1985, recorded in the Soundpush Studios in Holland and RAK Studios, London, both. Let's talk about RAK. RAK is one of the biggest labels of the 70s, producing people like Kim Wilde and Mud. Who else was on RAK? Racy, pop scene guys, you can help me out with this. There were a lot of big British bands on RAK Records, which was Ricky Wilde's label, Mickey Most. It was those guys, and they were racking up a lot of hits, no pun intended. The album was produced by Stewart Levine. It was on Elektra Records. Simply Red at this stage was comprised of the group's red-headed frontman, Mick Hucknall, on vocals, and he's definitely the most famous member, and I believe the only constant member of Simply Red. Tony Bowers was on bass, Sylvan Richardson was on guitar, Tim Kellett was on trumpet and keyboards. The album reached number 2 on the UK album charts and number 16 in the US, and pertinently, number 1 in the Netherlands, where some of the album was recorded. I love stuff like that. I love the fact that they recorded in Holland and it became a number 1 in Holland, and I love Holland. It's a really cool country where people have great musical taste, so good job, guys. Here's some things I didn't know about Simply Red. Their formation originates from the attendance of a 1976 Sex Pistols gig in Manchester. Also present at that gig with art student Mick Hucknall are original members of Joy Division, Smiths and Buzzcocks, as well as the Falls' Marquis Smith. So before Simply Red was the Frantic Elevators, who were a punk group. They disbanded in 1984, and their last single was Holding Back the Years. Simply Red was also a nod to Hucknall's devoted allegiance to Manchester United. I used to live right down the street from Old Trafford in Collyhurst, Manchester, which in those days was a bit of a rough neighbourhood, let's put it this way. But I used to walk past Old Trafford, and the wall at the side of the football stadium was like this. Like you were taking your life into your own hands. That wall could go down at any time. Manchester United is such a part of that city. And at that time, you know, they definitely really an internationally famous football team. So Simply Red's allegiance to the team is definitely going to be it's going to be meaningful with fans that also connected with the band. I listened to this album 4 times, and we got on to track 6, which was Money's Too Tight to Mention, which was a cover of the Valentine brothers song from 1983. The original was a scathing and candid attack on the Reagan presidency. Did the earth move for you, Nancy? The Thatcher years were unpopular with English working class people. So this was a smart cover and a more direct political statement for this time in England, which followed the brutal miners' strike of 1984. A number 13 record in July 1985, it also made the Italian top 5. Money's Too Tight to Mention. Yeah, I mean, how do I feel about this? I remember being in the Smash Hits offices back in 1985 when this was playing. I was a Tears for Fears guy, well, the singles at least. Songs from the Big Chair Review, I know, is still killing a lot of people out there, but to me, Simply Red was, I got it. It was just, I was a young guy, so I think that it's more mature material. I think Simply Red were perhaps a little too mature for me at the time that they came out. Now, I think the Valentine's Brothers version is better. I'm going to be honest with you. There's something about coming from the United States during a Reagan presidency that, you know, it's like, I don't mean this rudely, but like write your own song, kind of. Do you know what I mean? It's like Between the Wars does it by Billy Bragg. That really achieves it. And I made the mistake when I reviewed Billy Bragg's single of saying, you know, of dissing it because I was a kid. I didn't get it. But Money's Too Tight to Mention is okay. It's an adequate cover. It's an homage to the people that made the original, but, you know, I live here in the United States. I've seen what some people can go through in the sort of urban areas, and Money's Too Tight to Mention is their song. So, kind of like this with that. Holding Back the Years, it's the Frantic Elevators' last single. Here it is on Simply Red's first album, and on its initial release, it's hard to believe that it did diddly squat. This is a poignant, sad, reflective song, sung beautifully, and some say never equaled. I don't agree with that. I think that Simply Red had some great moments past this song. The song goes on to become a number 2 smash in 1986 and scores the band an American number 1, which is huge. Simply Red on this track were a fantastic British export. I have to tell you, I listened back to the Frantics version and I liked it. No sign of the I'll keep holding on refrain, and my favourite part is the muted trumpet. I really do actually like the trumpet on this song. Proof positive that if you've got a good song, don't give up on it. Red Box. They followed up the smash Holding Back the Years with Red Box, which is a decent enough song but had no chance of capitalizing on the magic of their international hit. I will say this of Red Box. It does make you feel as though Simply Red would put on a really good live show. It's good from that perspective. You feel like it's something that would work really well in a live perspective. If I'm in a crowd with a beer at a gig with Simply Red, I'm like, yeah, I could totally see that Red Box would work in that way. No Direction. The instrumentation is 80s bliss. He sounds like Phil Collins at times on here, which our producer will not be happy with at all. He doesn't like Phil Collins. In the same way as Phil goes weird in the middle of Genesis' Mama single. Picture Book is track 10 here. The title track is the final track. I like the synth keys. The tone of his voice is good. The song itself, for me, is a little on the pedestrian side. What I've been doing with these albums, obviously, because I want you guys to enjoy these reviews more and give these albums a fair shot, I sit and I watched a bunch of interviews with Mick Hucknall on the disbandment of Simply Red, walking around his old neighborhood. I will tell you that Mick Hucknall's not someone to mess with. Mick Hucknall, if you're watching this ever, I would never want to have a fight with you in a bar. Mick Hucknall's not someone to mess with. That fire that he has, that passion that he has, cannot be denied. Do not upset Mick Hucknall. I think there's a lot of passion, and I really believe that this man put his heart and soul into the music. And there are tracks where that certainly comes across. I think Simply Red was this massively successful British export. The Stars album is almost untouchable with its content. So many great songs on there. I think they were kind of finding their feet on the Picture Book album, and for that reason I award the album as a final mark, 68%.